on Facebook and YouTube as well.
Okay, I have I hit it too many times. All right, I invited you. There you go.
Yay! We got it today.
Awesome. Okay, didn't even have to try that hard. Welcome back to the weekly pet roundup. I said what you said. This is your.
Yeah, you're doing great. You did great.
Welcome back to the weekly pet roundup. I'm Jessica with the Pet Parenting Reset. This is Isabel with Covered in Pet Hair. She's amazing.
Hi.
She's wonderful. And we are continuing our conversation this week on creative pet care tips. And if I remember correctly, last week we used AI to help us figure out some creative ways to save some money, but also continue to take care of our pets. So this week we are kind of rolling that into veterinary care.
Yes. So how we save money when we've been talking, it's kind of been like, I mean, we're like financial analysts now. We've been talking about the economy on the weekly pet roundup for 3 weeks now. This is our third week in a row that we talk about the economy. And we all know, that there are a lot of reasons why right now people are concerned about the economy. I was just invited to speak by an organization in the pet world about, business owners in the pet world having concerns about costs going up and people not booking and things like that. So it's not just here at the, in the weekly pet roundup that people are concerned about money. Everybody's concerned about money right now for many, many reasons. I will apologize in advance if my internet is not great today. We are having a dust storm. So lots of winds.
Dust storm?
Yeah. So this has been I've been in El Paso for 8 weeks this year. 8 years this week. Sorry.
Yeah.
8 years this week. It feels like 8 weeks, but it's been 8 years. And this week feels like 8 years. But I have never seen the number of dust storms that we're having. I think that when we moved here in May, we had just missed like a bad dust storm season. And we have not had one since. So this is the first one in those 8 years that I've seen. And dust storms suck. It's just wind and dust everywhere. The air quality is bad to breathe. There's literal dust everywhere. You can't wear sandals without having to come home and like clean your feet immediately. You feel like you're covered in dust. My kids smell like dust when they come home.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like we have to stay inside, even though it's a gorgeous day. Otherwise, like we have to stay inside because it's so dusty. And it's like you can't really even see the mountains. Like I have a view of the Franklin Mountains from my house. They're right there. Like they're not far. I have an entrance to a hiking trail across the street from my house, and you can't see them. You can't see them out because, like, I think it's combined with like the drought in California and in Mexico. That all of that dust when the wind picks up. We always have wind, but now we have wind and dust. So anyway, so if my internet is spotty, that is probably why. I also want to say that, yeah, we are going to focus on veterinary care. And like one of the things that we always talk about is just kind of making sure that you actually need to go to the vet before going to spend that money. So that is obviously understood, like trying to monitor your pet at home, journaling about whatever issues you're observing before going to the vet so that you're not going in and out of the vet paying for tests. You can actually go with some information. And that obviously only applies when it's a non-emergency. If it's an emergency, I'm so sorry, you have to go to the vet immediately. But when you're noticing something like my dog has reflux and, sometimes she goes for weeks with nothing. And then we start noticing it again and kind of start thinking about what is happening. Have we changed any food? Is there something different in the environment? Like what's going on? And so before I run to the vet, I try to observe, take a beat, try, some kind of home remedy, maybe fasting if it's an upset stomach, something like that. And then I go to the vet, and I know you do the same thing. You do a lot of home stuff. And so today's focus is going to be on when you've done whatever you can at home and you're looking to save money when you have to go to the vet. So this isn't about like home remedies This is about the options that exist right now and what happens when you're faced with like a big bill that you are thinking of not taking your pet to the vet only because you can't cover that bill. Because I mean, we want to make sure that anybody who wants veterinary care for their pet who needs it knows where to find it. So we may not have every answer for every jurisdiction, every city, every state, but at least we'll get the conversation started and maybe give you some ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think just to kind of really reiterate some of the things you said is that one of the things I notice is I mean, so many people that I talk to, they're going to the vet for things that I would never tell them to go to the vet for. And then people are not wanting to go to the vet for things that's like, oh my gosh, get to the vet now, right? Like there's this disconnect with what should we go to the vet for and what shouldn't we go to the vet for. And I think these are generally two different people.
Yes.
Generally, not all the time, but they're definitely, yeah, like if your dog is generally healthy and they get diarrhea for a day or two, that is not cause to go to the vet. Unless we're talking about like a newborn puppy or something, like
yeah,
that's serious. But a generally healthy adult dog or even cat, like you get an upset stomach sometimes too, and you don't rush to the doctor. So there are definitely things that we don't need to rush to the vet for. And then there are things that we do need to rush to the vet for, and just knowing the difference. And I know we previously talked about, just because we are bringing up the whole, like, if it's an emergency, you have to go. I'm sorry, you have to go. And one of the things I know we've talked about before, because I had Jonathan Weinberg on my podcast from Care Credit, is that there are things out there that you can rely on. And I know you've talked in the past about there are, services that help people to get their pets medical attention when they don't have the funds for it. And I think, Care Credit, yes, you're going to have to pay that back, but that's kind of in that
yes.
world as well. Because a lot of times, honestly, like I've probably had my Care Credit card, and this is not an advertisement for them by any means, but like, I'm not making any money off of talking to you about this. I think I've had mine for like maybe 10 years, and I don't think I have ever charged on that card where there wasn't something, some like promotion going on where it's like 0% interest for 6 months or 12 months or what. So like, that's how I use it. I use it as interest-free money for, like, I put all of my vet related expenses on it, period, hands down, because they always have a promotion going on. And then I take the 6 months to pay it, because why am I going to pay the veterinarian $400 up front out of my bank account versus paying Care Credit $100 a month, and I'm not paying any interest on that, right? Like, it's just, it makes economic sense to do that. So
so long as you're responsibly paying it back, which I think that's where people get caught up, is they forget that they have to pay it. And it's not like you get 6 months without any payments. You still make payments.
Right.
You're just not accruing interest. And I love a zero interest deal or offer. I love those.
Yes.
I think they're so helpful. And I have a client who has a professional pet sitting business, dog walking, pet sitting, dog training, and they take Care Credit. So it's not just for vet stuff. If you have a pet care provider that doesn't accept it, talk to them about potentially adding it, because my client did just add it this year. And I thought it was so smart. Like, like you have, like you, heaven forbid, you have a surgery where you can't walk your dog and you need dog walking services, like falling back on Care Credit for that would be so helpful while you recover. Or heaven forbid, your parent is sick, or, I think about all the people that used to hire us as dog walkers. I had family who who the 25-year-old owner of the dogs got cancer, leukemia, and had to go to like Washington State. I've been thinking about them a lot recently, weirdly. But they had to go to Washington State for like an experimental treatment kind of thing. And so they had to hire us, and like they were wealthy. They lived in a beautiful, huge house, whatever. But like I'm thinking about like a family who's already paying for some kind of cancer treatment or a surgery, a huge deductible. They've had an accident and are in the hospital, and like you're kind of desperate, and you have this care credit card that you can just call somebody to be like, just charge my card and go walk my dog or whatever. You know, it is something to have. Like I don't have a care credit card, and like we're about to have to go back to the vet now with Kira's teeth. And like when you do teeth, and she's 14, so we have to do all the blood work and stuff. Our vet kind of thought maybe we could like avoid it, like where her teeth weren't so bad, but we're noticing that they are really red now all of a sudden. Or just because I was not there when the vet was visited, so things were missed.
Yeah.
So like we're gonna go back, and I'm like, why would I, like you said, take money out of my bank account to pay for this when I could potentially get a deal on something and pay for it slowly? It's almost like the Affirm payments you do online and like those kinds of things that are really helpful. Like sometimes you need something today and it's not in your budget, right? Like it's just not in the budget for the month, and you're like, okay, but instead of the $200, I can pay $50 4 times, and that'll be helpful. So I love that we're starting with care credit, because if you have decent or good credit, it should be something that as a pet parent, maybe you just have. And again, this is not sponsored at all. None of the stuff that we talk about is sponsored. This show has never been sponsored once, but we can definitely change that for the right.
We can change that.
We can definitely change that for the right product.
Yeah.
Call us.
And I have to say, like, I even remember when I recorded with him, like I said, I'm not here trying to sell you this product. Like I'm not making money off of this, but I legitimately am thankful to have this product. Even though it is a credit card, which like, you know, any, I don't know, financial person, I don't know, like they're always going to tell you they're a ripoff.
Financial analysts like us, we will tell you, be careful, be very careful.
And you do have to be careful with credit cards. But what and this is one of the things I learned from my last husband, racking them up. Anyway, I have to laugh about it, right? I just have to, because that's what I have to do. Is that like, don't spend your money if you don't have to. Right. Spend somebody else's money and not pay interest on it. Like, why would I not do that?
And right now we're talking to people who are struggling financially. We're not talking to people who have $500,000 in the bank. Like, I mean, they're not worried about like creative ways to save money on pet care. Right. They bought their dog for $10,000, right? Like they don't care.
Surprisingly, I have found Kim is driving me nuts. I'm sorry, guys.
No, you're fine, honey. You're fine. You bark.
Surprisingly, I have found a lot of times those are the people, yes, they're going to spend all the money on veterinary care in the world. They are not going to be spending the money on the right food. They are not going to be spending the money on the right groomer. Like, I don't know what this is. And I'm sorry if you're listening to this and I'm calling you out, but like, you're
the wealthier people are, the more they mind their money. Like I feel like that's just kind of, it happens. And when they don't, then you find like these like athletes and like musicians that like blew everything in like a year, right? You know what I mean? So like I remember working with professionals in the DC area who had these amazing multi-million-dollar homes. I mean, there was one client of mine that had a boxwood maze in the front of her house in the middle of Fairfax County in a federal manor house that was to die for. And like they had one dog, and like I just would sleep over all the time, and it was like I would have paid them to stay there, but they paid me. But I also had people who lived in like townhomes who were very frugal and had like, you know, their amazing careers and just lived in a small house and maybe spent the money on things that mattered, like having a dog walker every day. So you never know, but like the person who's tuning into this topic is like, times are tough. I want to have something. And like, when times are tough, having something like Care Credit, again, not sponsored, is helpful because it's something to fall back on. You can have this open, this like line, it's like a line of credit open without a balance, just so that you have it when you need it. My mom, you know, debt is a funny thing because my mom's a banker, and I don't think she'll mind me sharing this, but when my parents got divorced, my mom was making like $8 an hour. She's a banker now, but at the time she was not. I was a teenager. And she had this car that she refinanced like 3 times in order to make the payments. So like, was it a good financial decision? No. Did she need a car? Yes. Right. So like debt is one of those things that like, it's not about making the good financial decision for the short term. It's surviving. It's helping your pet. It's your pet ate something and it needs to come out now, not when you save the money, right? So we'll talk about too, like I mean, AI helped us last week, but AI is helping us again this week because I wanted to start off with these online vets. And obviously when you take out the overhead of a veterinary practice, you take out the face-to-face visit, you usually can save some money. And I use something like that. I mean, there's a bunch of them for veterinary telehealth, but I use that for my kids. I use something called Blueberry Pediatrics. I think the first year I paid $120 for the year. And they sent me like the little pulsometer. They sent me like the little thing to look in the ears. They're planning for whatever like viruses little kids get. So like they want you to be able to look in the ears and the nose. They want you to take the pulse and a thermometer, right? So like they sent me all that. And that was $120, including all that kit for the year. And then like, I think I renew for like $99 every year. And I added my sister's son while he was here because he got like a virus, and like they let me add this third child at no additional cost. And a doctor, like it's an app where you put in like the picture, like my kids have gotten conjunctivitis. So you take a picture of the eye and you send them their temperature, their pulse, and like whether they have any other symptoms. They get the picture, they look at it, they call the pharmacy. You never saw a doctor, you never left. And then they can provide like a doctor's note for the kids. So to me, it's like $120 a year, $100 a year is invaluable because that saves me the time of calling the doctor, going to the doctor, taking them out when they're already sick into the community. All that stuff is so worth it. So I'm already a believer when it comes to my kids. It doesn't replace, like if my kid breaks his leg, I'm not calling Blueberry Pediatrics.
I hope not.
I'm going straight to the ER. But like, it's one of those things where like you mentioned, like the kitten or the puppy who's constantly having diarrhea. Like send a picture of it and see what the vet has to say. So I really like those for people who maybe have a puppy or a kitten or they're new pet parents where they may not know how to gauge the severity of things. I think I got Blueberry Pediatrics during the pandemic when Mila was born. So I wasn't a new mom. I was a second-time mom, but obviously I was navigating a totally different world, and I couldn't get into the doctor, and I didn't really want to take my baby to the doctor and all that. And so when you are kind of a new pet parent or you're navigating some kind of challenges where maybe you work so much that you can't take the day off to go to the vet, you can maybe send a picture, and then the doctor calls you. Like, it's not like a FaceTime, but in the case of Blueberry Pediatrics, the doctor calls you. So you are speaking to somebody, and they're asking you questions, and they're asking for follow-ups, and they message you in the app again, being like, how, like 24 hours later, like, how's the eye looking? When did you start the drops, blah, blah, blah. And if you can get that for your pet and they're able to call in a prescription, that's when it gets a little hairy, though, because a lot of prescriptions, they'll have to call a vet near you for that prescription. So I don't know how that works. Like, most of the veterinary specific medications are going to be dispensed by a vet. So like, I've never used that. So that would be my only like concern about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's being used kind of the way you described, where you're not like, maybe it's something that they can help you with over Zoom or through photographs, and video, or they're kind of helping you navigate, like, is this serious enough that you actually need to go into an office and have some, because I think the big differentiating factor between pets and children, and I guess it also depends on like how young your child is, but a pet is never going to be able to say, this hurts, I don't feel well, my eye is stinging. Like, they can't tell you like, my eye is dry, or it's stinging, or like there's an acute pain. You know what I mean? Like, they can't tell you those things. And so having a veterinary professional put their hands on your animal in some cases is invaluable.
Well, in this case, it's all for acute stuff. So this is
Yeah.
stuff that is visible to the eye. This is not to
Yeah.
replace your annual veterinary
Right.
visit. This does not change that your senior needs to go to the vet twice a year. This is just your pet started, having diarrhea 24 hours ago and it's still there. Or your pet got like a bug bite outside and you're like, does this need to be seen by a vet? My dog Titan got a spider bite, and within 3 days it was like necrotic, right? But like that first 24 hours, I just ignored it. I didn't talk to a vet about it. I didn't photograph it. I didn't do anything. And 3 days later, it was like necrotic. So obviously that went to a vet, and he had to get laser and all sorts of stuff. But had I had maybe like a telehealth on day 2, when it was still looking kind of not terrible, but not great, I could have called there.
Yeah.
And I maybe could have saved some of that necrosis from happening. Right.
Yeah.
But I was like, there are so many things in veterinary care and in children. Cause I mean, I started this when Mila was a brand new baby during a pandemic. There are so many things that you see are different.
Mm-hmm.
They're different. Like, this poop has mucus in it.
Right.
Like, are you going to make an appointment and spend $80 to see and then you get there and like the dog has like a bowel movement that looks like pristine, like a poop emoji on the vet floor, and you're like, well, that's a waste of time and money. So there are things that like you really don't want to go to the vet for. And like I said, this is really only something I would recommend for people who are newer to pet parenting or have puppies and kittens, where they have an immature immune system. They do tend to get things more often, especially diarrhea. Like, if I think about when Titan came home to me, he was 4 months old, how much money I spent on the vet as a new dog mom. Like, I would have saved so much having something like this. I even took Titan to the vet when he was licking himself too much. And like, he was like a teenage dog licking himself, and he would get like his lipstick. And I was like flipped out that he had something wrong with him. So I took him to the veterinarian for an erection, guys.
I love you.
Like, would I do that now? I'd be like, stop licking, move on with your life, right? Like, that's what I would do now. But like, I was new to this whole gig. And so I think that's where like, this is perfect. If your dog has something chronic, this is not going to work. And they're even going to tell you themselves.
Yeah.
There needs to be a vet involved. I was surprised with my experiences with Blueberry, where like, they would even call in sometimes. Like, it was kind of like I was expecting them to be like, you need to take them to the doctor, but they would like say, okay, we're going to try this for 24 hours. If the fever's not down, you have to go to the doctor. They would work with me in that sense. And usually it was better within 24 hours. But I imagine these are actual veterinarians. So and obviously there's the liability issues. So, they're going to be like, that if your dog is limping and, cannot support themselves on that foot, you need to go to the vet. Like, there's not a video or a photo that's going to help me diagnose that unless I touch it. And I will say, dogs break their toes. I had a dog who broke her toe at 6 months, and like, we waited for 3 hours, like 3 hours. She would just like sit there whining. And like before bedtime, I was like, this isn't getting better. And I
Yeah.
had no clue that she had broken anything. She kind of walked in limping a little bit. We were concerned about like a spider or a snake bite because she had just been out in the dark in the yard. And, you know, at 11 o'clock at night, I had to take her in to the emergency vet only to find out that she had broken a toe in like the dumbest way, just like coming up the stairs. So like those kinds of things. Yeah. You can't do that unless you go and they need to like touch the toe and see what toe and get the x-ray. And she got a cast too.
Yeah, I know. I do that. I will do that with my dog. If she's like limping or something, I am okay. We're gonna sit on the couch. You're gonna get a massage, but I'm gonna be over here figuring everything out. I'm moving your limbs. I'm squeezing every single one of your paw pads to see if there's a reaction. Like I will do that with my dog because again, I don't want to go to the veterinarian for a limp, right? Like, okay, maybe you just pulled a muscle. Maybe I just need to massage it for you. Maybe I just need to put some essential oils on it. You can't fix a broken bone.
No,
but
she
also
didn't stop whining, right? So like it wasn't just a limp at that point. She's like laying down whining and you're like, okay,
what's going on?
This is where I need to, and like, why bother even calling anybody? Because that person's going to be like,
go to the vet.
Go to the vet. Just 100%. Like your dog is throwing up. You just caught them like with same dog. Caught her with like an open bottle of Proin, which is a chewable tablet that tastes like bacon for incontinence. And she had chewed like 30 of them. Am I going to call the vet and be like, should I bring her in? I know to bring her in. Who I called at that moment was the pet poison control line to get the toxicologist on and be like, I'm about to take her to the vet. This is what she ingested. And then they call the vet. So like, but again, this is me who's been in this industry for almost 20 years. And like, I've had dogs, so many dogs. I've fostered, I've raised neonatal kittens. I've taken care of, moms that just had babies, all the things. But like me at 28, when I first got Titan, I'd had one dog at that point.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, the amount of money I spent on nonsense. Especially like we talked last week, all the nonsense we talked about then too, the toys, the chews, the this, the that like add that to all the veterinary costs that I spent that I could have saved. I mean, we're talking in easily $2,000 in the first year.
Yeah.
Easily.
And one of the other things, and I don't know if this is on AI's list or not, there are just starting to kind of come around. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think it probably started later after the pandemic was technically over. Like these like mobile veterinarians kind of started popping up everywhere, not just like a single house call vet that's been around forever, but like franchise type, we're going out everywhere and there are vans mobile everywhere vets, kind of that popped up. And I think there probably is some maybe cost difference because they don't have the overhead of a brick and mortar. So there is that to be aware of as well. Something newer that is popping up that I'm a big fan of, particularly because I think it fits really well in with what I do. I am not here to replace your veterinarian. I will never, ever say that I am. But there are instances where, whether you're in like a desert where you can't get to a veterinarian because that's a thing that's happening and popping up more and more, or you don't have a veterinarian that you can trust at the moment, you're in limbo, maybe you're working with a pet health coach, there are labs popping up where you can go in and just get your whatever lab work done that you need for your pet. So if you are working with a professional, whether it's a pet health coach like me, or maybe doing telehealth with a holistic veterinarian who lives halfway around the world, you can go in and get those labs that you need without necessarily paying the overhead of this veterinarian. Now, sometimes you do need a veterinarian to check that animal out. I'm not saying that this is like
and to review the results. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, I mean, somebody like if you are working telehealth with a holistic or integrative vet, they're going to be able to read the results. If you're working with a pet health coach like me, I'm going to be able to read the results. But yeah, you do need to work with somebody to be able to read the results. And there absolutely are going to be instances where a veterinarian needs to have their hands on your animal, period, end of story. But these are ways to potentially save. And there are veterinarians out there who are like, these are the kinds of things that take up way too much of mine and my staff's time. They want you to bring your dog or cat in. They want to see your dog or cat, but there are things that they want to what is the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Outsource. And so, and for me, I do think this is a way where you could potentially save money. I know when I talk to all of my clients and I'm recommending them getting rabies titers or any other titers, I am always directing them to HemoPet because it is so much less expensive. Veterinarians charge an arm and a leg to do a rabies titer test, when we all know full well, I don't care if your veterinarian sends it in or you send it to HemoPet, everybody is sending that rabies titer test
back
to Kansas State. It is all going through Kansas State. There is no reason for you to pay $400 to your veterinarian when you can pay $80 to HemoPet plus whatever your vet charges for a blood draw and spin.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I will say about the visiting vets, and I say visiting vets because my mom's vet in Miami was she had a brick and mortar, and she would also go to the house. So like she called herself the visiting vet. And in my case, when I first moved to El Paso, I used to do my vet right now, who has a brick and mortar, would do house calls. And it was cheaper for her to do a house call for 4 pets than for us to take different pets at different times. So we would do that. And I think her house call fee was like $90, whereas maybe her in-office fee was like $60, but you couldn't take all 4 at the same time because she doesn't have a big enough practice, right? Yep. So those things are important to ask if you do have a lot of pets, if it would be smarter to either have your vet come to you with a fee or to find a mobile vet that can just like clear out the afternoon and come over. And it's amazing how much they can do at home for these wellness checks. Like they bring their little kits, they draw blood, they take everything. I mean, they euthanize at home. All those things are really doable. I feel like even like in the case of Titan, when he got his bite, we could have done laser, like, cause it's like a tool. It's not really like that big of a thing to transfer. But I will say that there are many different types of online vet services. Chewy does one for free. So offers free chat and video consultations. That's Chewy Connect with a Vet. Again, not sponsored, but I'm just giving you ideas. Vetster, PAWP, PAWP. Those are veterinarians and nurses for advice and support. Whisker Docs. Whisker Docs even does email consultations. Bond Vet, Virtual Veterinary Care, Dutch, and AirVet. And some of these charge by like the consultation, and some of them have subscriptions. So you just have to figure out what it is that you are comfortable with, how often you use them. And then also I want to talk about how there are options for those big, these guys are great for like, diarrhea, whatever you want to save $50 or whatever. But like, let's talk about when there are big diagnoses. Your dog breaks her toe and you have to pay $2,000. And then after you put the cast on, it gets wet and now she has gangrene. So now you have to go back in and they remove the cast and now you're at another $500. And this was like in 2008. So can you imagine what it is now in 2025? Your dog ate a sock. Your dog got into the Proin pills. Your dog, heaven forbid, got impaled at the park, which one of my staff members had happened to her. One day she called me. She's like, I can't walk dogs. I was at whatever park and my dog literally got impaled. She had like 142 stitches in the wound. They had to transport her with a stick in her torso. Your dog, heaven forbid, gets hit by a car. These things happen. So like and then another thing that happens, your dog or cat gets diagnosed with cancer or some kind of other disease that, is expensive to treat. So what do you do then? Like, yes, you have access to care credit. Yes, you can potentially start your consultations online, but now you're at the vet. Now you're facing, whatever you spent that day and whatever comes next. So there are organizations that will help you. You just have to do the legwork. And I feel like people here in this topic, I feel like people think it should be easier. But I mean, there are a lot of people out there in the same boat. And so it's not easy. And like, there's not a lot of money to go around. So there are like funds that different organizations have to help. We have a friend, Sam, Bears Bites that's her business. And she has like a nonprofit where she raises funds so that she can help people with big vet bills. And there's a lot that's on a small scale in her area, but there are bigger organizations, including, the Humane Society of the United States, who sometimes has help. So, but what happens there is you need to find the organization, you need to apply for the help, you need to move quickly, you need to follow up. You may get rejected, and you need to find multiple places and can't put all your eggs in one basket. It can be really frustrating, but it can be really helpful. Like I said, I think it was last week or the week before, there's the Vet Corner group on Facebook. They also provide not only like you can post a picture that says like, oh, my dog's limping, look at her toe, it's swollen. They can say, that needs veterinary attention. It could be broken foot. There was a person who posted a cat that she had found unresponsive, and everybody was like, obviously, like, take your cat to the vet. And then later there was an update, like she's gone or whatever. And there are other things where it's like a skin issue where maybe it's not like the life or death, but the vets will be like, okay, that looks like XYZ. So now you have like a diagnosis, more or less, and you can go to that. But they also, as part of their responses, usually link some like economic financial resources. And they're all over, like in Texas specifically, Texas Veterinary Medical Foundation, the LEAP program offers free veterinary care to economically disadvantaged individuals, particularly the elderly and the disabled. Frankie's Friends, no cost and low cost veterinary care, especially for cats, including spay, neuter services and veterinary forensic services. That's if there's abuse or something like that. Criminal activities surrounding these animals. Humane Society of the United States, they have a list of national and state level organizations that provide these services, either, like preventive stuff like spay, neuter, vaccinations, whatever, microchipping, for free or for low cost, and also for bigger catastrophic stuff. The Pet Fund, owners who cannot afford veterinary care, it's a nonprofit. Bow Wow Buddies, Pause for a Cure, the Magic Bullet Fund. We have a friend, oh my gosh, I can't remember what it's called now. Moose's March does like testing for cancer for free. So they provide the kits. So if you are worried that your pet might, have something and, it's not urgent, but you're worried, she provides that. So there's like an endless amount of organizations out there. You just have to do the legwork. And I think people get really discouraged really easily. Maybe it's because you and I are such doers that we're like, I mean, I need a solution, I'm going to find it. Like not everybody's resourceful, but you have AI now. So like literally tell AI, you can use ChatGPT, you can use Gemini, and be like, ChatGPT. Well, don't say ChatGPT because you're just wasting water, but just be like, help me find low cost or no cost veterinary care for my dog who was just diagnosed with cancer, and like see what you get in your area. Use your resources, talk to people, call your vet, call your Humane Society, your local shelter, ask. Don't be embarrassed. That's the biggest thing. I think people don't ask for help because they're embarrassed. They don't feel deserving. The organization will determine if you're deserving or not. Just ask them.
Yeah. Well, yes, but also like just because they may not have enough funds also doesn't mean you're not deserving.
Well, they wouldn't tell you you're not deserving, but like they might
Yeah.
tell you like we have people in more need.
Yeah.
Or they might just tell you like we've exhausted our funds. Like we would
Right.
love to help you,
Yeah.
but we can't. But like I mean, there are people who want support that maybe don't need it as much as other
Yeah.
people, right? So
True. Yeah.
the biggest thing too is sometimes there's stuff going on. I don't know if everybody knows all like the million pet related holidays we celebrate each year.
Oh gosh.
Like
Yeah.
May is National Chip Your Pet Month. National Pet Week was last week. So like there are a lot of organizations that will run programs, promos, things like that over specific holidays. Pet Cancer Month, I think when was it? We just did something on Pet Cancer Month.
Oh, we did. No, I think it was back in like
November, right? Yeah, I think it was like
October,
November. Yeah. So like when those things are happening, you might have some success getting some support for something, maybe not again super acute, but something chronic that maybe you're managing. DCM, like degenerative myelopathy. Degenerative myelopathy is something that you manage for a long time. And so like there are groups on Facebook for everything. So like if you have a diagnosis, go straight to those groups and ask like, how can I get help? When my dog Titan was diagnosed with degenerative myelopathy, I went straight to the DM group on Facebook and it was so helpful. They told me how to save money on genetic testing. They told me like what works, what doesn't. They really are like, and the people who are admins of these groups are so committed to helping pet parents that like they truly are like a wealth of information and like invaluable input for free because it's literally just like another member of the group giving you all this advice.
Yeah, which I want to temper, but yes, they can be very, very helpful. You still have to figure things out for yourself, but take that under advice, like take everything they give you under advisement. Because there are absolutely some times where it's going to be amazing information, and there's also going to be some times where it's really horrible. There's a group,
and that's why I said admins. That's why I said admins.
Yeah.
Not just the members.
There's a group that I heard about a few months ago on Facebook that they are recommending dogs only eat fruit.
Okay, but don't join those groups. I'm talking about like specifically, don't join those groups. That is a red flag. When we talk about red flags, that is like a huge red flag. Any group that tells you to feed anybody only fruit.
Yeah.
Didn't the girl who only ate bananas die?
I have.
There was a girl who for a long time. Yeah, like there was a girl who only ate bananas. I think she was from Ecuador. This is why like I connected with her. And I don't know if she passed away, but there was a girl, very attractive, always in her swimsuit, like very sexy. And she was just like, I only eat bananas. That's all the food I need. And I remember being like, yeah, that doesn't sound right. So yeah, if it doesn't sound right, double check it. But it's a really great place to start when you have a diagnosis that you're learning about. Because those groups for me, like for the DM diagnosis, there was all the information I was going to find online was like compiled for me. So it was like curated. Yep. And then there were people kind of like already in comments being like, well, this didn't work for me or this did, or I disagree with this because of this. And that, everybody's kind of like, if they allow links, that's super helpful. And this particular group does. Some places don't allow links at all, which is super annoying. But if they allow links, it's so helpful. And, none of them were promotional. It was just like helpful. Like, there are not a lot of studies on a lot of things that ail our pets. So a lot of it comes down to anecdotal stuff, when you're dealing with these things. And that's where this stuff is helpful. Like, my dog has DM, but I did this protocol with CBD and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And it, he seemed to do better. So you're like, okay, well, what do I have to lose? When you get these diagnoses where it's like, and like in my case, like we didn't spend the money on an MRI. We chose not to because he was so advanced in age, like whether or not we were going to find it was silly. But we did instead use that money for acupuncture. So like by saving some money somewhere, you can invest in something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think these were all great tips. tips.
Yes. We're going to cut it short today because
Yeah.
Jessica and I need to have a meeting
Yes.
about nothing related to pets. I mean, obviously pets are always part of the conversation, but we need to catch up. So I think we talked about everything again. Use your resources. Don't take no for an answer. Keep looking for it. And actually, Jessica, I wanted to ask you if next week you would be open to discussing what to do when your dog bites. Like you have a biter. I just got a message from a friend in the DC area whose friend found a dog, kept it, and the dog's a biter. Resource guarding. I mean, in the one paragraph, I already know, like resource guarding, lots of management having to be done. But a trainer told them they had to euthanize. And so what I figured is we could talk about all the options that come before euthanasia.
Yeah. Well, and I think
obviously when it's time to behaviorally euthanize.
Yeah, I think I had sent you. We can do that, and then maybe the next week roll into, or even try to. I don't know if we could fit it in. More than 99% of U.S. dogs have a behavior problem. Texas A&M research.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, let's do the bite first, and then let's talk about the behavior problems and what they are. Common behavior problems. So we'll get off the topic of economics. Okay. So we're gonna like put our financial advisor hats aside, and now we're gonna put our behavior consultant hats on and discuss dog bites and when a dog bite has gone too far, when a biting dog is not fixable.
Yeah.
There are situations where that happens. So spoiler alert. I mean, there are situations where the dog is probably better off at rest. Because they're not enjoying life at that point either.
I think it's extreme, but I do think that absolutely can be the case sometimes. And we always want to take the quality of life into consideration. So let's talk about that next week.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate you. And if you have anything after you catch this later, not live, if you want to continue the conversation in comments, we're happy to participate. Just keep it nice.
Yes, please.
All right, guys.
All right, y'all have a wonderful week. Thanks, Isabel.
Bye.